does that mean? Like, what does that mean to someone? And I guess what other intentions might go along with that? Because intentions are something I take seriously. So if I were to say that, I would want to know what I meant to myself rather than my intention is to really have a spiritual experience this pregnancy. My intention is to really listen to my body this pregnancy. My intention is to, eat really well. Like, I think there are a lot of ways we can be more specific, and that's just not specific enough for me. I don't know what it means. And again, if people know what it means, they should use it, but I kind of don't. Does it mean, if it means without, it's interesting to me to set intentions that are that way, that are kind of in the negative. So if it means like, well, it means I won't do these things. Yeah, I think that's just an interesting way of thinking about it, rather than embracing like what I really want, rather than saying, I'm going to name my pregnancy something because I don't want these things, without really knowing if you'll even need them. So how could you possibly say ahead of time? Maybe in hindsight, you could say I had a wild pregnancy. I'm not sure how it's an intention. So that's my blab that might make no sense.
Well, I think it makes perfect sense. I think those are actually some of the exact same words I used in the article. Just that, yeah, you could call it that in hindsight, but how can you say I'm having a wild pregnancy, meaning from the moment of conception to the moment of birth, before it's happened, unless you're someone who truly, and there are some of these people in the birth space, which I think is fascinating, unless you truly are someone who would not, like you were saying, Marion, like it's this won't negative, like against energy, you would not receive modern medical help no matter what. Which I think is just, it's really, really an interesting conversation. Like, gosh, I don't want to get into naming names, but a lot of the people that are talking about it in that way, in my understanding, haven't really attended that many births and have therefore kind of like this super romanticized notion of like, well, it's almost never the case that that is needed, and they haven't really had to grapple with those really intense decisions, either as a mother or as a midwife. And so therefore it's really easy, and gosh, gets me on this whole like social media thing. Like, people can create these fake lives and fake guru statuses really easily. All it takes is like some marketing smarts and the ability to write and be personable and take some photos, like anyone can say anything. And it's given rise to this really not realistic thing that people love, though, because does sound sexy, and it does sound romantic, and it does sound exciting, like wild pregnancy, and like this idea that we don't need the modern stuff at all, that it was created for no reason except for ill intentions and because people hate women. Like, yes, like modern obstetrics does come from patriarchy, like it was rooted in that. And yet there are really cool this is my perspective, of course, that there are cool tools that have come about as well as humans have learned more and created new things. So, yeah, just a word of warning to everyone looking at social media. And like, we know this, I think, in other ways, and there are conversations happening out there about this, although I don't feel like we've seen enough of it in the birth space, just calling out these sort of like way oversimplified, it's the word I'm looking for, Maren, like, I mean, fake is the word that I keep coming up with, like these fake narratives that are easier to sell than the realistic ones that are less idyllic. And there's a spectrum, because then there's also like really curmudgeonly old midwives. Oh, I meant to send you a screenshot of this today, Maren. There are really curmudgeonly old midwives who are like way on the other side of the spectrum and think like birth never works and they're always needed and they're the savior and all of that too. Like that is also true, that exists, and is difficult then for people to know what's true, and it's very polarizing. So I have a new moon migraine, I guess, just putting that out there as well. If I'm a little garbled today.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, at the end of it, it's not a competition. It's really not. So I know, again, I think with social media and the way the world is, there can be that amongst women that, there is a right way and this is the only way. And if you say you're having a wild pregnancy, by God, you better have one and not let anyone find out that whatever it is, you decided to take your blood pressure. And that's so ironic to me because, it's assuming that anything you might want or need could only possibly come from someone else outside of you, right? So it's already assuming like you'd be swindled and maybe women aren't that smart and they'll fall victim to the serial ultrasounds. Like that's the assumption. And it's like, what about all the smart women out there, many of which I know are here, who might choose whatever it is? Maybe, it's a chiropractor, maybe it's an ultrasound. Like, what do I care what it is? But that woman is making that choice from the inside of herself. And she's not afraid of someone telling her how to do it. So I think it's really played on the trauma once again, which is kind of my overall feeling about like the free birth movement. That doesn't mean I think every woman that's ever had a free birth feels that way, but I mean the movement as a whole is based on trauma. It is based on don't ask anyone for anything because they will take advantage of you. Don't go to a midwife, don't go to a doctor because it will always be, you'll always be on your defenses. So I have a problem with that because I've been in those scenarios, medical situations. So has Margot, I know. And I don't think, we've, at least in the last decade, felt victimized or felt like we had to do something we didn't want to do. So I'm just always wondering why we're not supporting women more in that powerful nature that comes from the inside, rather than always making them wear armor in the event they should ever come in contact with anything, that confronts their beliefs. Like, we don't need that. We don't need that kind of protection. I don't think, if we're really connected and doing our best, right? Just doing our straight up best to, again, have an intentional pregnancy, to set that intention and to trust the body, to trust the baby growing, and to trust the universe that whatever is needed will come in. And as conscious beings, we can then make that choice rather than this dogmatic, I will never do this thing. Because the minute you say you will never do it, you're also inviting the universe to smack you, smack you and make you regret you ever said you would never do something. Believe me, I've done it. I'm sure many of us have. So yeah, it's just interesting, like feeling that whole term has to me, because I love the word wild. So it's not that. But it's this feeling of control. I guess that's what it is. It feels very controlling. And I think pregnancy is a great, amazing time to expand and to learn about yourself and, not just go along with someone else's definition of what you should do. But women have to probably step up a little bit to being more confident and, all of the things that we know we need to do when we're growing a human. It is no one else's job.
Yeah, and something that it makes me think about, like you had mentioned serial ultrasounds, and I can think of a bunch of examples, including from my own pregnancies, of things that I've done, vitals I've taken, measurements that I wanted. And actually, we were looking at a picture the other day. We're reading that book, It's So Amazing, which is about, sex and conception and birth, and my little 4-year-old was reading it with us, and there was a section in there about ultrasound and how you can see a picture of the baby in the belly before they're born. And I think they asked, like, do we have pictures of us in your belly before we were born? And I was like, not really. And then I was like, well, wait, actually, I have a photo from when I was in Arizona for a skills workshop with you, Maren. I was 19 weeks, and Maren had to hook up with this really cool guy who was willing to come do an ultrasound, like for her clients or whatever, like cash. So we have a picture of us in Maren's office, and I got like a 5-minute or less. It was maybe like 3 minutes ultrasound to peek at Arrow's heart structure, because I had been taking some herbs for my blood pressure stuff. And one of the possible low probability side effects of that could be in pregnancy that it affects the baby's development of their heart. And so it's like, to me, that felt so worth it to check it out for 3 minutes. And so I showed him this picture. It's like a picture of the guy, and I could zoom in and we could see little tiny Arrow in there. And it was really cool. So anyways, that's one example from me. And, that was not something that before I ever got pregnant, I thought I'd want to do. And with my first pregnancy, I didn't do, a 20-week anatomy scan of any sort. But I also wasn't taking some like weird Indian snake root herb that was maybe okay and maybe not. So things change from pregnancy to pregnancy too. But what I was going to say is that, when you mentioned the serial ultrasound thing, what comes up for me a lot, and I feel like I talk with my clients a lot about this, is it would have definitely been easier to be a midwife 500 years ago in many ways, because we wouldn't be having these sort of like philosophical dilemmas around, well, this exists, so now do we use it or do we not? And so I feel like the wild pregnancy thing is this like grasping at straws sort of feeling of being like, if I say I'm having a wild pregnancy, I just don't even have to have these hard thoughts. I don't even have to go there. I don't have to like wrestle with these decisions. I'm just having a wild pregnancy. I'm going to pretend none of that exists and is available to me, which isn't actually possible, like it still is there. So unless you are 4 hours away from a hospital living off grid, like if you started bleeding profusely before your baby was out, even if you had a wild pregnancy, like I don't think those people are going to not go to the hospital, right? You see what I'm saying? So it's just really interesting. It's like a thing you can say you're doing until you're not.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I guess most of my pregnancies were before that term or phrase existed. And thinking back, other than my first, I mean, I didn't do anything because pregnancy is pregnancy. And I wasn't concerned about anything, and I was healthy. And, so it's like by default, I didn't do anything, but I didn't try to not do anything. I just didn't want any of it. And I didn't think it was needed. And the times I felt like I needed to figure something out and make that choice, I'm really grateful for, because those times where I had to sit in my own uncertainty and, like you're saying, not avoid it, say, I could go do this thing, to get more info. And all of the times that I was in that situation in my own pregnancies, it forced me to really learn how to connect with myself and my baby, and come to the conclusion that there are lots of ways to get information. It's true. And technology is only one. So even that is kind of limiting, because by saying wild, or we can't have technology, it's like, great, but how many other things can you have? And even if they're quote unquote natural, those things can still take you away from the connection. So again, what's important to you? What is your intention? And then you can go from there and make choices. But there's lots of people, I'm sure, who maybe use herbals and plants, and that's a whole other topic. But those can also be used without intention. So just because it's not a technology doesn't mean that we're not looking to something else to like make us better or give us an answer. So I guess where do all of those things fall in a wild pregnancy? I'm not sure. I don't know that there is an answer or a definition. I'm just saying there are varying degrees of intervention that we can do on ourselves. So if that's the concern, then you really have to start looking more closely at all the ways that women can intervene and interrupt their own pregnancies and their own births that have nothing to do with technology. And I would rather focus on those things. They're way more interesting to me than, again, this like black and white, whatever it means, you can't do this thing. Yeah, I always come back to the same thing, which is like, I don't really understand. Pregnancy is natural and we should all make our choices. Yeah, Schaefer, I'm reading your comment about the meaning of the word wild, suggesting expansion and openness and freedom. So true. Very much agree. But then when it comes to a lifestyle or pregnancy or birth, it very quickly becomes limiting. Yeah, you said it way more succinctly than I did. That's what I was attempting to say, right? It's like the wild that we see isn't quite the wild that's being reenacted in this like sticker that women are putting on themselves. And I'm not one of these people, but I've had a lot of babies. I just wonder how many women out there that are younger and maybe having their first baby, again, have this idea that they're going to get a medal or something if they have a wild pregnancy, that somehow it makes, will make it better or make birth easier. Or I don't really know. I'm not sure what the assumption is. Again,
your microphone is doing something weird.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Just another tech glitch today. That's all.
Oh dear. Sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted to help you figure out what was going on with it. Sounded like it was like flapping against something.
No, it's just in my computer. No flapping.
No flapping.
Yeah.
What else?
I mean, I'm just laughing. This whole meeting has just been so technologically ridiculous.
I know we had such high hopes too. I had this like really nice, some of you who were on the other link that is the same link, we don't understand. I had the nice thing up with like the meeting will start shortly. I had music lined up to play. We had like grand plans, but maybe that's a good metaphor with the wild pregnancy conversation. Grand plans. Best laid
plans. It is. We tried so hard and look what happened. We just completely were out of control of a section of this experience. And
true.
Yeah, we love that you all got to witness that. So I agree. If there's any questions or comments, feel free. Otherwise, we are shelving our 13 moons. So I'll blab about that for a minute. Many of you know that. That's our childbirth course that we've had for many years. And so we'll put the link there, but it is open for a couple more days. And if you don't know what that is, you can go check it out. It's quite a comprehensive birth course. And if you purchase it before it goes, which is the 21st around summer solstice, you will keep access. That's like the only question we keep hearing. Yes, you will keep access We're not expecting you to buy it today and lose access in 4 days. That would be insane because it's like 50 hours of content. So go check it out, whether you're pregnant or not, pass it along, and hopefully some more people can get in there to take advantage of that before we close it for further enrollment.
Yeah, and I think it would be, well, let's see. There's another comment that just popped through. Do you want to read it since it's addressed to you, Maren?
I'll try if my microphone holds up. Yeah, Schiffer says autonomous and informed decision making allows for tremendous empowerment, even if it means having a midwife or getting the ultrasound or taking the tincture. The experience doesn't need to be completely removed from everything to be life changing, but maybe for some it does. Sure. Yeah, I mean, you know us, Schaefer, so this isn't meant for you necessarily, but if you don't know us very well, I feel like we are last on the list of people to tell anybody how they should do anything, right? So it's more just pulling some of this vocabulary apart when we get the chance, because we're also trying to figure out, where people are at and like where we fit. And I know that goes for all of us. It's like, where do you fit in the culture of what's going on? But I always say, call your birth what you want. Who cares? Call it whatever you want. I've attended births as a midwife and had clients say, "Oh, I had a free birth." I'm not going to correct anybody. I don't care. Call it whatever you want. But the point being, pulling apart some of this so that there is a stronger intention for each of us around what we choose. And I know that's most of the people here, so maybe that's a moot point. But always tuning in to what you want, what you believe, where you think your strengths are. And I think, especially as far as pregnancy goes, not that pregnancy is like a weakened state, but it certainly is a vulnerable state. And there's nothing wrong with receiving support to whatever degree, right? Because some people are like, well, then I want my OB, whatever, have your OB. And for some women, support is someone to talk to, right? Or their spiritual community. So not throwing any of it out, being really honest with yourself about what you need.
And I think that this goes back to what you were sharing before, just around like trauma. And I think even some clients who hire a midwife, this can certainly be the case. People who are like, I'm having a home birth because I'm scared of the hospital environment, or because I don't trust doctors, right? There's this like fear aspect. I guess a thing I've noticed is that oftentimes if people are coming at it from that perspective, they're often really out of touch with their own needs and desires. So they're saying like, I want a wild pregnancy, or I want a free birth, or whatever. And yet they also aren't able to really articulate what they want and need in any given moment, which I think is so I guess I feel like it's sad. I feel sad for those people who probably could really use some sisterly support or wise woman support as they move forward, even if that means that they ultimately do have an intervention-free pregnancy or birth or whatever. But just having that support to really tune in and look at their choices, why they're making them the way that they are making them. Like, are they coming from a place of fear, or are they coming from a place of intuition and groundedness? Yeah, I had another point too, but my brain ate it. That's okay. Oh, my point was just going to be that something that I feel like we haven't said a whole lot in a lot of places, but I think is funny and interesting, is like just sort of getting back to what I was saying earlier around this concept is really sellable. And like we could make a lot of money selling a free birth course. Like we could do that, or a wild pregnancy course. Like it's very marketable, it's very sexy. And the reason that we don't have those things, although we've dabbled here and there, but we've never really went that direction, because it didn't feel authentic, and it didn't feel, what's the word I'm looking for? You know what I'm trying to say, Maren?
Yeah,
Like
it just has never been aligned to that extent.
Totally could have put on that hat and like become the people that did that and sold that and preached that. But at the end of the day, having been to lots of births and continuing to go to births, it doesn't feel aligned, and it doesn't feel legitimate even. Honestly, like I've seen too many people need too many things to be able to say like, yeah, you should totally not do blank. Like I just last week, I think, had a client who showed up and peed on a stick, and she had blood in her urine. She had no idea that she had a urinary tract infection that had gone into her kidneys. It was totally asymptomatic. And, some of the results of that are not great, including early births and waters breaking and, all kinds of things. So anyways, my point being that it's really hard to to preach that or have the megaphone about how great it is to never use anything when you've seen interventions in technology benefit people sort of without any doubt. And then, as I was saying earlier, there's obviously the other side of the spectrum. So how do we kind of hold space for all of that? Which is much more complicated and less easy to sell because it's less sexy.
Yeah, it's a really interesting place to be, I think, in a way, to be a midwife in this day and age, but to not be a medical provider in the ways that many midwives think of themselves, to not be a part of that culture where we're the authority and we save people all the time. But also, to have this like real life experience that pregnancy is natural and normal. However, there's a lot to be on the lookout for that you wouldn't necessarily know you didn't know. So I think that's the benefit of midwives, at least working in the way that we do. We're not saving anyone, but we might be able to shine the light on things here and there in a way that feels really good and useful. And, of those situations, would things not be okay somehow? I'd say most of them would probably work out fine, I bet, maybe in a different way. And then, like Margot's sharing, there is, even the small percentage of women that really would have benefited from consulting someone, some wise woman or support in their pregnancy. We had a woman come this year that came very late in her pregnancy. And my understanding is, I think she was shooting for a wild pregnancy and a free birth. And it turns out she had a very far advanced preeclampsia by the time she stepped into our space. And it was not enough time to do anything but, send her to the hospital and have her experience a cesarean because she was really sick. So again, it's an interesting place to be. I would never try to scare anyone by, saying, oh, if you don't hire someone, that will happen. No, for most women, that's not going to happen, but it certainly does happen. And I think in the case of that woman, she was just really turned off and scared by letting anyone in. So that could be a focus of another call some other day, learning to trust not just yourself, but if you chose to invite someone in, what that relationship is like so that women don't feel like they have to, do this all alone, in quotes. Yeah, and I always appreciate your input, Victoria. So she says, the problem the groups using the term wild pregnancy have some very weird script too. yes. There's like dogma just forever and always. That was me talking. That is all about radical responsibility and not open to all things possible in this realm. Also, wild pregnancy allows these people marketing this to have no skill. And yeah, I think that's what Margot was saying, right? It's like if you don't have experience and you haven't seen the variations, then it's a really beautiful, naive bubble perhaps to live in where all pregnancies can be wild. Great, sure. I mean, I could see how someone would think that if, they had one baby and they had this experience. And what about the education piece? In the last couple of minutes, reading Kirsten's comment here, I love your way of saying it, Kirsten. I think self-directed is just like down to business and makes sense and doesn't disclude the need for support or the desire for support. But seeking information that women can do themselves, like you're mentioning, so vitals, urine, blood pressure, whatever, that's also education. So it's fine if someone doesn't want to do that. They don't feel they have a need to. Even the way we work with people as midwives, we don't force people to do any of that stuff. But it's also a chance for learning, right? It's a chance for knowing your body in a way maybe you haven't before. Lots of women come in and they don't know their blood pressure, right? It's not something they're like sort of familiar with. Do they have to? No. But is it a piece that might make them feel powerful in some way? Totally. So throwing out education as kind of the baby with the bathwater is definitely kind of like a secondary issue, perhaps, of this term. But certainly, yeah, kind of wrapping up, like having a wise woman on the journey is obviously the way we feel at the end of it. Not that people can't choose differently, but that's why we have a school where we're creating more women out there in the world that can fill this role. It doesn't have to be one of hierarchy or of control over another woman. We can sit as sisters with the women we are serving while at the same time, having experience that is honored and always looking to her for what she wants to do next. So it really doesn't have to be all or nothing. All midwives are not bad. All technology is not evil. So much of it is just about our intention and how we use it. And if we call in the medicine of whatever it is, right? So even things that are outside of what we thought we would do. I know I've told the story before of one of my miscarriages, the late miscarriage, where I did use some Cytotec after 4 months of waiting for this baby to come out of my body, and what sacred medicine it was to have that and to have the elder midwife and Margot with me. So, if I had just had that in a box somewhere and said, I can't ever do that, that's not natural. I don't know. I don't know where I'd be, because 4 months was a really long time. And I was very, very grateful for the direction from spirit really to go that route. So it doesn't have to be another person. Sometimes we're directed by our own intuition to walk a path we never thought we'd walk. And we have to be humble enough, I think, to be open to that when we need it. And that's about all I have to say about it tonight.
I have some links on a screen I can pull up if you wanted to type them into the chat box.
You want me to type them, or you mean what?
If you could.
Okay.
Can you see my screen?
Oh man, I'm just laughing at Zoom.
Just have like our three main things up here, our regular website, indiebirth.org. We've got so much stuff there. We've got podcasts, we've got articles, you name it. People often send us questions and it's like, oh my gosh, just type in indie birth and then whatever your question is on Google and it should tell you exactly what to read from our site or to listen to. So much stuff there. And we also have the Doula Academy, which is on the regular website. You can read all about it at indiebirth.org/doula academy. That's our 4-month doula training. And, we call it a doula training, but it's really so much more than that. And I just got a testimonial yesterday that totally made me cry from a woman who lives in Ghana, and just about how it's changed her life. And it's not just about the birth stuff, but about being a woman and finding your power and your voice and helping other women do the same. It's like, it's about birth, but it's also just like about women taking over the world. Right. So that's pretty sweet. Again, that's a 4-month program. And then we have our Indie Birth Midwifery School, which similarly is not just about midwifery. It's about so much more as well. It's about finding yourself, your wise woman inside you, honing those skills, your intuition. When we learn about nutrition, it's not just this abstract thing you're practicing on yourself, looking at your own eating, for example. There's so many examples, but that's the first one that comes to mind. And that's a 20-month program that has, I believe, 28 courses in it at the moment. Things are always changing a little bit, getting added. So, yeah, we've got lots of trainings and education and support for all of you, midwifing doulas and midwifing new midwives here at Indie Birth. Anything you wanted to add, Erin?
Nope. We'll see you back here in 2 weeks at the full moon. And I guess that's July-ish. Yep, July, it looks like July 3rd. We'll see you here. And we promise to be less susceptible to technology somehow.
We're gonna master it. We're gonna master the technology before then.
We have mastered it in many moments, but this was just not one of them. So thanks for being patient with us today at the start, and have a beautiful rest of your weekend. Bye.
Bye-bye.